Yo. Good morning, friends. How are we doing? It's Friday here in Charlotte, North Carolina. Rainy day. Hope you guys are having a wonderful morning. Hope it's productive. Look at this Cybertruck, dude. It looks so dumb. I don't care how much that car is. It looks absolutely absurd. Could never catch myself driving one of those cars. Today, I'm gonna talk about the car that got away from me, you guys. Everyone has experienced that point where they had to sell a car even though they didn't want to, or they hastily sold a car and then regretted it later down the line. That is what I'm going to be talking about today. People often ask me, basically with every car that I used to own or have gotten rid of, like, oh, do you miss it? Oh, do you regret selling it? There are definitely a few cars that I regret selling, and there are definitely a few cars that I could live without. The first one on the list is my E90 M3. Oh man, do I miss that car. And as you guys know, I have the E92 M3 right now in manual, but I owned a 2010 LCI Alpine White E90 M3 with fox red leather interior. It was a DCT car and it had like 75,000 miles, and I bought that car for $25,000, which is unheard of in this market. If you guys understand the E9X market right now, they're crazy, man. I think the E90s are a little bit more expensive than the E92s, but the E90 that I had, man, it was a really fine example of an E90 M3. Bought it in pretty good condition when it had 75,000 miles on it, didn't have the throttle actuators done, didn't have the rod bearings or anything like that, but I basically cleaned up that car so good, man. Ended up replacing the front bumper because it had a bunch of nicks and scratches on it that were just kind of beyond repair. Once I had that repainted and paint matched, I had the entire car PPF'd. Not just the front end, but the entire car, which is complete overkill. You really don't need to do that. The front end is plenty, but I was learning, right? So I bought this E90 M3 with 75,000 miles on it. It was in decent condition, much better condition than the majority of cars that I buy today. If I had found that E90 M3 today for 25 grand, I would have gone right to the bank and grabbed the cash and bought it immediately. I wouldn't have even thought about it. This was like a year before COVID when I had bought the E90 M3. And it was my first S65 car. And so, you know, it took a lot of getting used to. Obviously, it was a lot different than my 328. To give you guys an idea of basically the way this went is I had my 328, my F30, and then I bought the E90 M3. That was the next car that I had. And I owned both at the same time for a while, as well as the M2, which came afterwards. So bought the E90 M3 for 25 grand, needed a lot of work. I probably put, I don't know how much money into it, man. I was doing YouTube at the time, but it was early on, so I wasn't making as much money, but I definitely spent a little bit of coin on it to make sure that it was good. However, it was early in my journey, and I didn't really know like which parts were good parts and which parts were bad parts, and didn't build it the way that I would have built it today. Would have been a big difference, obviously, but the car was really well sorted. I mean, I had the rod bearings done, throttle actuators, all of the little things that can go wrong on the S65 platform were addressed on the car. It had lower mileage. I mean, it really was a great example of an Alpine White E90 M3, you know, and the DCT was so good. Like I talk about, you know, having my E92 manual M3, which I absolutely love, but the E90 and the DCT, even the E92 and the DCT, that is a really nice match. Like the perfect garage for me would be to have both because I just love both of them. I'm not one of those guys who's going to be like manual or die, or like, oh, auto's faster or screw manual. For me, man, I'm one of those people who can appreciate all angles of it. Like I really would love to have another DCT E9X in the garage at some point. I just think they're fantastic cars, and that transmission is so good. I just love it. This was my first experience with the S65 and the E90 M3, and I felt like it just taught me so much how to modify these cars and like the type of ownership experience that that these cars give you and what to expect from them. And, you know, I just put a lot of like parts on it that I wasn't proud of, like in retrospect. You know, here I am obviously a lot later in life, and I look back and I'm like, oh my God, that car was had some like really cringe parts on it. But at the end of the day, man, it really wasn't that bad. I guess it's just a preference thing. And so I had gotten rid of the 328. I had sold that car, and then I had my E90 M3 and I had my M2 at the time, and COVID had just started. It had just been announced. There was a lot of uncertainty. People didn't know what was going to happen. Everyone was scared. Everyone was selling everything they owned, and they didn't want to spend any money, and we had no idea what was going to happen. And I was self-employed at that time, so there was some uncertainty there. I didn't know if I was going to be able to afford all of these cars. And so I decided to list the E90 M3 for sale. And I think, you know, as you grow older, you begin to appreciate these older cars much, much more. The new cars, they're great. These are beautiful, fun, fast cars. They do everything you need them to do, but they just don't really have like that soul and purpose that some of the older cars have. I didn't appreciate what I had looking back, because like today I'm like, oh man, I wish I had never sold that thing. But it was a weird time. COVID was just happening. This is unprecedented. We had never gone through something like this before in our lifetime, and there was just, like I said, a lot of uncertainty. And so I put the car up for sale at around, I want to say it was like 30,000. It still had like 70 some thousand miles on it. And like I said, everything was sorted in the car. The car drove perfectly, no issues, like flawless. Paint was flawless, like everything perfect. The kind of cars that like you just don't really find these days unless you're going through like Enthusiast Auto Group. I put that car up for about 30 grand, and it had a bunch of low ball offers, had one at like 28. And, you know, I should have taken the 28 because I found out quickly that, you know, people were very, very nervous about spending money. They were very, very scared about what was going to happen. So I ended up getting an offer for, I think it was like just under 26K. And it was a guy in Oklahoma who he tracked a bunch of his cars. He had like a Porsche and a Ferrari, and like this was just going to be his little like track toy. And so he ended up offering a little under 26, was going to take care of everything, transport, all that stuff. It was basically going to be a pretty effortless process. And I just decided, you know what, this is the best I can get right now. And I'm not really sure, you know, I'm not really sure what the future holds. I don't know what's going to happen here. And I just would like to get out of like a payment on this car. So I ended up taking it for 26, man. And oh, dude, just like puts a hole in my chest, bro, because that car, it was really worth a lot more than that. Like it was a very, very good example of an E90 M3. And if I would have just held on to it in today's market, it would have gone for like, I don't know, probably 10K more, I guess, on like the far side and the high side. Even when he picked up the car, you know, it was just not the way that you want to send off one of those cars. Like I went for the last drive in the car, really got to enjoy it, and like made a little video about it. And then, you know, the transport came to pick up that car, and I was like immediately nervous because, you know, this guy had hired like the crappiest transport ever. This guy showed up in like really, really low end pickup truck that was just like missing panels, and the trailer was not an enclosed trailer. It was like a sketchy at best trailer. It was just all bad, dude. And this guy tried to put the car onto the trailer. Mind you, that car really wasn't even that low, but the guy tried to put the car onto the trailer, ended up like cracking the lip. Basically had to call the guy who had bought the car and be like, listen, man, whoever this transport is, no good. You're gonna have to buy a new lip and a new bumper. Obviously, like that wasn't gonna be my problem. I didn't have to, you know, take liability for that. But it was just not the way you want to send off your beloved E90 M3, is just watching it get crunched up on the trailer and then things getting broken. And man, it was just not a great experience in total. But I think that, you know, for me, that is definitely the car that like got away. Circumstances were just different, man. Like COVID was a scary thing at that point in time. time. Like, no one knew what it actually was. No one knew what was going to happen. And it really just created a lot of hysteria. And, you know, we look back now and we realize a lot of things were, well, I'm not going to get into that. But yeah, so man, I often find myself going back and looking at E90 M3s today and thinking like, oh, dude, I would love to just get into another one. It's just not the right time, and it's not like I don't have the space for it, and it would be a silly purchase. But and I also learned a lot about, you know, buying cars and like getting financed for cars. And, you know, this was like my second performance car that I had ever bought. I wouldn't even consider the 328 a performance car. I guess it would be like it was my first real M car that I ever bought. And, you know, I had financed it at the time, and I didn't really know a whole lot about financing or money, and I was trying to teach myself. But I think I put like 10K down, and then I financed like 15K through like a credit union, you know. I got like a good rate and everything. Now I just only buy cars in cash. Like I'm not into financing cars anymore. I'm done with that. Anything that I buy is going to be with cash. And that's, you know, a lot of the cars I buy now are older cars that I fix up, that I buy for like 5, 7, 10 grand, and I just completely redo them. And that's really what I enjoy the most when it comes to like building up these BMWs. But the E90 M3 was definitely the one that got away. I wish I could have that back. And then the other one that got away was the M4 GTS. Now, you know, my M4 GTS was a little bit weird because it didn't have the cage in it. Someone took it out, had an accident history. It wasn't like, if you're going to buy a GTS and you want it to maintain its value, this is not the one you buy. But if you're someone like me, it might be the perfect one to buy. So I ended up buying that car and had that for about a year. So a lot of, you know, you go through life, and there are going to be cars that come and go, and that's just the way it is. And sometimes you don't want to have to get rid of them, but your life makes you get rid of them, you know. And luckily I'm not in that position anymore. Like I have my cars that I absolutely love, and the builds that I can build no matter what happens, I'm good. And yeah, so that's kind of my story, man. And I think that everyone has a similar story. I think that there's always going to be those cars that that get away from us, or that we you know, wish we could have kept forever, but we weren't able to. We're going to end this video here. It looks like I'm going to be sitting in traffic for the next 2 hours. So wish me luck. See you in the next one. Peace.